You've probably heard people in the past say that the TV show The Simpsons can predict the future. And after you see the evidence that I'm going to present you with today in this video, you might agree with them. The Simpsons has predicted the future a number of different times, and in some ways that were absolutely freaky. I'm talking exact predictions for the future, exact situations that played out in real life exactly as they appeared on the show, people dying, people running for president, mass casualty tragedies. The Simpsons has predicted it all. Today, we're diving deep into the Simpsons conspiracy. I'm your host, Colin Browen. As always, I don't want to do anything to myself. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. All the opinions on today's show are solely mine, the sole host and producer of the Conspiracy Files. And without further ado, let's do a deep dive. So first of all, glaring change. I know that this background is a bit different than usual, and I'm switching the whole thing up. I'm in my new studio right now. I was kicked out of my other room because we turned it into a guest room here in our house. So we had to redo the studio in this room. All the walls are black in here, so we've been trying to figure out how I want to do this, what we want it to look like. My wife, Courtney, helped me set all of this up, and Connor, her brother. So it's been a couple days of effort to try piece this thing together in a way that I'm really happy with. I like the way that it looks right now. I think I'm going to end up changing it. There's obviously some things that I want to do and continue to do with this set, including, putting the Conspiracy Files behind me and all of that. But I really do like the new vibe. It's got kind of a sleeker vibe. It's less messy behind me, even though all those documents that were behind me were original documents. Those are like museum quality pieces of the past, like the document with George H.W. Bush speaking about the CIA at Bohemian Grove, and the original wanted poster for James Earl Ray using an alias. All those things were original, so I'm gonna miss them. They're actually sitting right over there still here in the studio room. But yeah, let me know what you think about the studio. Let me know what you think I could change. And this is exclusively if you're actually viewing the show. If you're listening, I'm gonna describe it to you. I'm in a black room. Like the walls are literally painted black. Got some red lights behind me. I'm wearing a very bright white hat, a red shirt. I'm actually sick right now, and yet I'm continuing to do the show for you guys. So I'm working myself to death. You can probably hear that in my voice. Just bear with me, please, as we try to get through this today. I'm just coming back from a 2-week trip to Amsterdam, Berlin, Germany, and all over India. So yeah, it was the craziest 2 weeks of my life. Chasing down criminal that I've talked about here on the show before, interviewing people that have never spoken on record before about these crimes, exposing these things to a degree that it's never been exposed. No journalist, no film producer, nobody has ever written anything about these crimes. I mean, it's absolutely crazy, the stuff that we've done in the last 2 weeks. It's going to be an international story. Just mark my words. Like, this project is so much bigger than a YouTube channel, and it's taken a lot of time, a lot of money. It's completely self-funded, coming out of my bank account, plus with help from you guys who donated to the campaign. So thank you again to everybody who donated back then. But I'm really, really excited to show you guys what we're working on. We're not even close to being done. We have another long leg of filming in July, and then in August, and then September. So this project is extremely complex, but the things that we got on camera, the things we got people to admit to us that they had done, the confrontations that we had with perpetrators, the talks and heart-to-heart discussions with victims who were crying with us and we were crying with them, the places we visited, the things that have never been filmed before that we filmed, it's going to change something in the world. And just mark my words. I know it sounds like I'm hyping it up, but it should be hyped up, because once you guys really see what I'm talking about here, you'll understand the gravity of this situation. Even yesterday, I was sitting here in this studio back from the trip, and one of the perpetrators that we confronted, they weren't home at the time that we knocked on their door, but I left them a message. And just yesterday, about 2 weeks later, I received a call back from this person, and I talked to them for about an hour about their crimes, and they told me some crazy stuff about intelligence connections and all these other sorts of things, but I won't get too far into it. I know you're here to learn about The Simpsons. Honestly, y'all, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment on this video. Anything that you comment helps the channel so much. It just shows YouTube that you're watching. Make sure to like it, share these videos out. I have people that don't like me, I think, that target my videos when they come out and they report them, so I've been having struggles with YouTube striking my videos, which is just crazy, but it's your guys' help that helps make this show what it is. So everybody who shares, comments, and likes, I appreciate you so much. And to understand this phenomenon of seemingly supernatural foresight that happens with The Simpsons, we should know what television show this phenomenon came from. The Simpsons is an American animated sitcom created by Matt Groening in the early 1990s. The first episode of the show premiered on December 17, 1989 on the Fox Broadcasting Company. It has since become one of the longest-running television shows in history, with over 30 seasons and over 700 episodes. The Simpsons is meant to be a satire of American life, following a lovable but dysfunctional family in the fictional town of Springfield. The show gets its title from Simpson, the last name of the dysfunctional family. It was chosen because the creator believed it sounded like simpleton, a word that well describes the patriarch of the Simpson family, Homer. This fictional family consists of the father, Homer, who works at a nuclear power plant, his stereotypical housewife, Marge, his troublemaking 10-year-old son, Bart, his intellectually gifted 8-year-old daughter, Lisa, and an infant daughter named Maggie. The character names were chosen to match the names of the creator's own family members, with Matt Groening substituting his own name with Bart. The show hosts a massive cast of characters, employs many well-known voice actors, and is one of the most famous, one of the most popular animated shows of all time. It's well known for its comedy and its ability to present a caricature of Western culture and the human condition. The jokes that the show presents were originally thought of as ridiculous and unlikely, and they were meant to create a narrative of the facetious and amusing. However, many viewers began to notice what seemed to be a funny coincidence with the show's bits and storylines, and slowly, over time, it became obvious to viewers that the show was hitting a little too close to home with some of its comedy. The events that the show began to portray actually started to occur in real life. As another event was predicted and came to pass, people began to tweet things out like, "The Simpsons did it again," and "they're never wrong." And this entire thing has spawned ideas of conspiracies as well, with many of the predictions being somewhat terrifying in nature. So, what are all these predictions that The Simpsons made? I have to say, I used to love The Simpsons. I don't know if you guys out there have watched the show as much as I have, but one of my favorite things when I was younger was The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Every year, the anthology episode for Halloween, The Shinning with Homer and all of them reenacting The Shining. The Shinning is just amazing. That whole groundskeeper Willie and everything. I don't know if you guys have seen any of those episodes, but I remember my mom used to have a Treehouse of Horror boxed set VHS, and it had Bart Simpson as like an electrified skeleton on the side, and it always intrigued me. And when I was old enough, they let me watch the episodes, and I fell in love. I just love it. And I love, even, it's nerdy, but at the end of those episodes, you know, The Simpsons has the little thing where it goes, but for those Halloween ones, they have like an organ stinger that's like, and it's like creepy. Super nerd tangent. Okay, let's just move past that. I do love that though. I've listened to that. I've looked that up on YouTube specifically just to hear that sound again. I'm a nerd, so nothing's new. But we need to get to the predictions, because this is some very spooky, ominous stuff. So this whole thing began when people noticed that The Simpsons accurately predicted the outcome of a popular sporting event, the Super Bowl. One of the first correct predictions came with the episode Lisa the Greek in 1992, about 2 years after the show began. As the show was a caricature of real American life, it often featured everyday events, with one of those events being the upcoming Super Bowl that year. In the episode, Lisa, the 8-year-old daughter of Homer and Marge, had created a method to predict the winners of NFL games. Homer had used his daughter's method to place bets on the outcomes of these games to win some money. And one of Lisa's predictions was that the Washington Redskins, now renamed the Washington Commanders, would win the Super Bowl against the Buffalo Bills. The prediction turned out to be correct, not just in the episode, but in real life as well. The episode aired only a few days before Super Bowl XXVI, and when the real game came, the Commanders beat the Bills. This could be said to be a coincidence. Obviously, the outcome is 50-50, with an even chance that either team could win. Perhaps the show had merely won with the flip of a coin. However, the next year, they got lucky again. A year after the original episode, again right before the Super Bowl, the staff of The Simpsons decided to dub in the names of the new Super Bowl teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills. Lisa predicted the Cowboys would defeat the Bills, and shockingly, the show would again prove to be correct. The Cowboys indeed did beat the Bills in Super Bowl XXVII, and though it was strange that it happened twice, people just shrugged it off. It had once again been a flip of a coin, with 50-50 odds, and The Simpsons had just happened to be correct twice in a row. However, this could no longer be seen as just a funny coincidence a couple of years later in 1995. The Simpsons team again decided to redub the episode just before Super Bowl XXIX, with Lisa predicting the San Francisco 49ers would take home the victory. Once again, the show was correct. This was the last time that the show predicted the winner of the Super Bowl. They ended their redubbing efforts, but this wasn't the last time the show would prove its strange talent for foreshadowing. People noticed it was strange, but as it was just a TV show meant to entertain and amuse, people were skeptical that there was anything more than a coincidence here. The next prediction to be correct was only a couple of episodes later. In 1992, the episode Homer at the Bat depicted Homer and his softball team putting their trust in a bat because it seemed to be particularly lucky. Mr. Burns, Homer's villainous rich boss, decides to hire professional baseball players in a fit of jealousy to cause Homer's team to lose. One of the players he hires is MLB star Don Mattingly, but Mr. Burns has a temper tantrum during a game and benches him for his haircut of all things, claiming his sideburns are unruly. This 1992 episode's peculiar comedy bit was seen as nothing but a joke. That is, until a real MLB game the next year in 1993. Stump Merrill, the manager for the Yankees, insisted that Don Mattingly hadn't cut his hair in time for the game. Don was then benched for this infraction, and the wild circumstance in the cartoon had once again turned true. Determining Super Bowl outcomes was just one thing. Perhaps the show just had a strange run of luck. However, with these circumstances and this event coming true, the idea that The Simpsons were able to predict the future began to take root. Even before the season 3 episodes and redubs, there had been earlier episodes that made predictions that would come to pass much later. For example, season 2 episode 4 of The Simpsons was titled 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes on Every Fish. This saw the introduction of one of the minor animal characters seen in the show, Blinky, an orange three-eyed fish. In the episode, the three-eyed fish is found in Springfield, in a river downstream from the town's nuclear power plant where Homer works. This seemed to just be a funny joke about radiation affecting wildlife, but in 2011, The Simpsons yet again proved their ability to predict the future, though it wouldn't be proven for almost 20 years after the episode aired. In Argentina, 5 men were night fishing in the Rio Tercera Reservoir Lake. Their fishing spot was called Chorro de Agua Caliente, meaning hot tap water, because it was where the nearby nuclear energy plant pumped its used water. The men hooked into and landed a wolffish, a decently sized fish known for its teeth and aggressive nature. The fish seemed to be normal, that is, until the fisherman shined a flashlight on the top of the fish's head. There, on its crown, just like Blinky, was a third eye. Of course, this spawned commentary about The Simpsons once again predicting the future. After the three-eyed fish, there was another prediction: the censoring of the classical statue David by Michelangelo. The episode Itchy and Scratchy and Marge premiered in 1990 as the 9th episode of the show's 2nd season. In it, a slippery slope about censorship leads to the residents of Springfield calling for the famous statue of David's fictional counterpart to be censored by fitting it with a pair of jeans, covering one of the more private components of the artwork's physique. The Springfield residents reasoned that the artwork supported nudity, and they considered it obscene because of the specific body part it put on display. Now, this was just a comedy bit critiquing censorship, yet in 2016, The Simpsons proved their powers of precognition once again when a plastic copy of Michelangelo's David was put on display in St. Petersburg in Russia for a classical artwork exhibition, and some of the city's residents were displeased with the iconic statue's nudity. A letter written by one woman sent to a Russian news network and then translated by the BBC is quoted as such: "How could you put this bloke without any trousers on in the center of St. Petersburg, next to a school and a church? This giant spoils the city's historic appearance and warps children's souls." After an organized campaign called Dress David, the town voted on a costume that would be sewn and tailored to the massive recreation to hide its nudity. People consider this to be one of The Simpsons' predictions, but it could be history repeating itself. The statue has in fact been censored for hundreds of years. Many people have complained about the statue's nude form, even stretching back to the 1500s when it was fitted with a leaf garland to hide the offensive area. One could argue that the censoring of Michelangelo's David isn't a new idea, and that The Simpsons merely took took inspiration from history, but the woman's words, so precise, were to fit the statue with a pair of trousers, just like in the cartoon's episode. Another prediction was made in Season 2, Episode 15, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, which showcased a truck which looked ridiculous in its reaching attempt to be futuristic. Homer created this truck meant to cater to all Americans, but the truck, titled the Homer, turned out to be a massive flop. People argue that a real version of the Homer was unveiled in 2019 when Elon Musk unveiled his Cybertruck. Meant to be a pickup counterpart to Musk's famous Teslas, known for their luxury and futuristic elements, the design was more than lackluster. The vehicle became a heavy source of amusement as people made mocking memes about the hideous truck's blocky design, looking like something that they claimed would have come out of a PS2 game. The Homer's fictional electric vehicle from the episode, was also met with similar insult for its design, and many people online began to think of the Homer as a fictional precursor to Elon Musk's Cybertruck. It has since been added to the list of uncanny predictions made by The Simpsons, with many drawing similarities between the two. Here, the phrase, "The Simpsons did it again," began to see popularity. And another prediction came only a couple episodes later. In the Season 2 episode, Brush with Greatness, Ringo Starr of the Beatles replies to piles of fan mail that had been sent many years ago. And in London in 2013, a similar event transpired. Though less precise than other predictions, Paul McCartney replied to two fans from Essex who had sent their letter in 1963. The letters had been found in a car trunk sale, and McCartney's hilarious reply was, "Better late than never." He thanked the fans for their lovely message, and this too went down in the books as another, though less precise, Simpsons prediction. Another prediction that The Simpsons made which came to pass was one related to technology. Technology has long been predicted by TV shows and books, with George Orwell's 1984 predicting CCTV camera monitoring all the way back in 1949. But The Simpsons predicted something far more innocuous and sweeter in nature: baby translator apps. In the 1992 Season 3 episode, Brother, Can You Spare Two Dimes?, Homer's brother Herb creates a device that had never been seen before and would make him millions. A device that could take baby babble and translate it into understandable speech. Interestingly, many apps like this exist today, with Cry Translator, Baby Talk Translator, and many others on the market. They aren't able to translate as well as Herb's fictional device, yet many consider this to be one of the examples of The Simpsons predicting the future again. So, only in the first 3 seasons alone, The Simpsons predicted at least 5 different events, some of them being extremely precise. For a cartoon to be able to predict so many events seems strange, but things truly begin to take a bizarre twist when it comes to Season 4. The first prediction from Season 4 came in Episode 8, titled New Kid on the Block. Homer, known for his love of food, finds a new restaurant in town, an all-you-can-eat buffet. After he eats way too much of their food, Homer is banned from the restaurant out of fear he will drive them out of business. Homer then goes on to sue the restaurant in court on the basis of false advertising. And wouldn't you know it, a famed court case mirrored the episode years later in 2017. A man from, coincidentally, Springfield, Massachusetts, sued Golden Corral, a popular all-you-can-eat buffet, for $2 million. He was kicked out of the restaurant after eating 50 pounds of food, and brought Golden Corral to court for false advertising in the same way as the television show. Just like Homer in the cartoon, the man accepted an out-of-court settlement to end the suit. At least, that was the big news at the time. In reality, this event never happened. It was a joke put forth on satire sites and has since been fact-checked as false. However, many people at the time truly believed that that event had occurred, and the story is considered to be another of The Simpsons predictions, even though it never happened. The next prediction is equally strange, but completely true, unlike the false advertising suit. In Season 4, the episode Whacking Day follows the people of Springfield as they chase down snakes and beat them to death in order to keep the serpent population under control. Almost 20 years later, a real version of Whacking Day came to life. In Florida, there's an annual event called the Python Challenge. Pythons are an incredibly invasive species in Florida, with their presence becoming so large that it has become a threat to the ecosystems of the state. Since 2013, the Python Challenge has become a way to win money, with cash prizes given out to the person who catches the most Burmese pythons and removes them from the ecosystem. As strange as it sounds, The Simpsons predicted an annual event where citizens of Florida go out into the wildlife refuges and remove snakes to protect their ecosystem. And while the Python Challenge certainly isn't a pleasant event to most people, the next few events that The Simpsons predicted were altogether darker in nature. Season 4, episode 21 of The Simpsons was titled Marge in Chains. In the episode, Marge is charged with shoplifting and sent to prison. While she's locked up, a shipment of products came into Springfield, which infected everyone with something called Osaka flu. The Osaka flu was similar to a disease that also swept through our world many years later. Like the Osaka flu in the episode originated in an Asian country, came to the United States, and caused major havoc. There was no treatment available for Osaka flu, just like in the early stages of, and the ideal treatment was considered to be bed rest while scientists worked on a. One of the show writers later spoke to Reuters after The Simpsons' prediction of the event made people leery of the show's ability to predict the future. It was getting too real, too close to home, and people were asking questions. The writer claims that the Osaka flu was simply based on plagues that had previously ravaged the world, like tuberculosis and the Spanish flu. However, the name Osaka flu derives from the disease originating in Asia. Much like it spread quickly and there was no treatment available beside bed rest. It also saw hospital beds filled at an alarming rate, but perhaps, like the writer said, it was only a coincidence as the episode was modeled after previous pandemics. However, with their remarkable chain of predictions all coming true, even though one was only satire, people aren't so certain, and the strangely accurate and sometimes even dark predictions don't end there. Many call a bluff on the fact that the Osaka flu wasn't predicted because of one other event that occurred in the same episode. Most people in the US remember the so-called murder hornets, which became a national fear at around the same time as killer bees were spotted in the United States, nicknamed Asian giant hornets. These massive bees can reach up to 2 inches in length, and when the bees were spotted in the US, they became a threat to the US bee population. And during the same episode that featured the Osaka flu called Marge in Chains, a crowd demands a placebo to cure their illness. One of the members of the crowd pointed to a nearby truck that could hold those placebos. And when the crowd knocked it over, they broke a box marked Danger Killer Bees, which released a swarm of bees into the town. Even the placebo itself could be considered a prediction. When the various were released, many doubted their efficacy as they were developed so quickly. Others believed that it was only a placebo meant to make people think that they were being kept safe from the dangers of the disease. These predictions alone were eerily similar to the life-changing event. But also, during the episode, unrelated to a certain debacle with the town mayor reminded people of Ted Cruz. In the episode, the Springfield mayor holds a press conference to address the pandemic affecting the town. It's revealed, however, that the animated mayor is only wearing the top half of his suit over a pair of swim shorts, is using the fake background for his office, and is actually off on a beach in the Caribbean. Many saw the similarities between that event and when Senator Ted Cruz went on a vacation amidst a Texas disaster after at least 50 people died from a winter weather emergency. Ted Cruz at the time issued a statement about the severe weather, but was flying to Cancun in Mexico for a vacation. And he didn't cancel the vacation, he didn't come back early. He said the trip was a mistake, but he received severe backlash for his decision, and it followed suit as one of the many Simpsons predictions that had come true. So, I was living in Austin at the time actually. We lost power. The whole city didn't have power for days. I didn't have food. I lived in an apartment. Our elevators were down. I had to go up and down the stairs every time I had to get outside. It was a crazy event. And there were people dying, like my wife's family all throughout the Houston, Conroe area where they are. They were frozen over. There was, people dying left and right here. And when Cruz snuck out like a sneaky little, I already didn't like him. He's lied about so many things, but that was a true piece of politician moment to me. You guys can feel however the hell you want to about Ted Cruz on your end of the spectrum, but I'm just definitely not his biggest fan. But anyways, back to the predictions. From the continent of origin to the first treatments, lying politicians, then to killer bees and placebos, The Simpsons, with one episode, seemed to predict multiple facets of the event and 2020 in general, all in one show. After season 4 predicted the coming pandemic, season 5 had its own share of accurate predictions. Episode 10 shows a Las Vegas style casino brought to the town of Springfield, with 2 characters being chosen to represent the famous performers Siegfried and Roy, who were known for working with wild animals, including white tigers. During their performance on the show, a trained tiger suddenly turns vicious and attacks them, meant to be a comedy bit about working with wild animals. This season aired in 1993, and only 10 years later, a similar event occurred during a live performance, shocking onlookers and audience members alike. Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy was working with white tiger Manticore when suddenly the animal turned on him and began to viciously maul him. Roy was dragged off stage by the tiger, his neck clamped between the animal's teeth. Manticore the tiger only stopped when he was sprayed with a fire extinguisher, and Roy was rushed to the emergency room. The stage was covered with blood, and many believed he wouldn't survive. After the attack, Roy's career trajectory was permanently altered. Some say that it was bound to happen, as working with massive wild animals is a tragedy waiting to happen. But the duo of Siegfried and Roy had been working with these animals for 44 years until the attack. It was a shock to everyone that the performers would be mauled by their own animals, as they had done their routine so many times that it was memorized down to every word and gesture. So, while some think that the performers were playing with fire, in reality, it was their everyday work. And the tragedy was an unthinkable surprise. In fact, while in the ambulance, Roy Horn stated, "Manticore is a great cat. Make sure no harm comes to Manticore." Roy always said before every performance, though, a wild animal is always a wild animal. Don't ever forget that. And sadly, he proved to himself the truth of that matter. The tiger attack became one of the most famous Simpsons predictions. Most people who know about the Simpsons phenomenon know about this event, but the next one is fairly unknown. In episode 15 of season 5, another prediction would be made, this time about space. In 1993, it seemed unrealistic that commercial flights to space would happen, so an episode of The Simpsons was created about an everyday man, namely Homer Simpson, going to space to help NASA with their television ratings. But this too would come true. In 2022, an all-civilian spaceflight was organized by SpaceX as a fund for children's charities, named Inspiration 4. In fact, there have been several civilian spaceflights since the show aired. Perhaps it was only a matter of time. But in 1993, it was beyond the unthinkable, to the point of comedy. This was a whole plot point in the episode that this was so unrealistic that it was hilarious. And as you know, there was just another civilian spaceflight that went horribly awry with how the public received it, with Katy Perry and, Bezos funded Blue Origin, I think it's whatever the hell it's called, sending all those women up to space. I know a lot of people are going to have thoughts about that. I've seen lots of posts from lots of different people. Some people believe it, some people don't. I'm just keeping my thoughts to myself on the matter. But the next prediction that The Simpsons made was too unnerving to believe it could actually happen in real life. But like almost every other prediction, it came true. Episode 19 of season 5 features Doris, the elementary school lunch lady known for her lack of cooking ability. One of the jokes in the episode was that Doris's secret to good food was to add horse meat to the kids' meals. And while funny on the show, it proved to be completely unamusing in real life when in 2013, the horse meat scandal ripped through Europe after it was found that Tesco burgers were 29% horse. Throughout the investigation, other meat products being advertised as beef were found to be up to 100% horse meat. Pig meat was also found in the beef, a horrifying revelation for religious communities who were forbidden from eating pork and had relied on the authenticity of the product they had purchased. While some places in the world regularly eat horse meat, it was not an acceptable element to the beef purchasers of Western Europe. This was one of the biggest food frauds of the 21st century, with millions in beef products being pulled from shelves. 10 months later, according to the Guardian News Network, a massive and horse smuggling operation was found, implicating animals and one of Europe's most wealthy beef tycoons. During the investigation, migrant workers gave testimony about being paid in cash to process defrosted meat that was years old and had turned green from putrefaction. The parallels here are completely eerie, with a lunch lady falsely advertising chops and putting in chunks of horse meat, serving it to unsuspecting consumers. Adding this to the list of Simpsons predictions, there have now been over 15, just in the first 5 seasons. Then, season 6 carried its own set of predictions, with autocorrect being the first in episode 8. In the episode, the school bullies have their sights set on Martin, a stereotypical nerdy school kid. A memo is read by the bullies on a Newton device, mimicking the smartphones of today. The memo reads, "Beat up Martin," but the message is later scrambled to say, "Eat up Martha." Autocorrect had been created by Microsoft a year prior, but it hadn't yet come to phones. Smartphones, for that matter, hadn't been widely available, with the 1992 Simon Personal Communicator being an incredibly early version of what we know now today as iPhones and Samsungs. The Simon Personal Communicator, or SPC, was created in 1992, but wasn't marketed for 2 more years, and it only worked in 15 US states. So perhaps the Newton device was merely meant to resemble the SPC, but but autocorrect was only available through Microsoft's word processor. Therefore, autocorrect was added to the list of Simpsons predictions. Some episodes in season 6 made multiple predictions in a single episode, some of them extremely precise and confusing. In episode 19, called Lisa's Wedding, Lisa's future is shown through a flash-forward sequence as told by a fortune teller. In one shot set in London, a familiar building is shown in the background beside the Tower Bridge. This building is today known as the Shard, yet it would only be built in 2009. Over 10 years after the episode aired. And only adding to the eerie similarity, the year that Lisa's future was set to was 2010. Perhaps it was simply a random building drawn by animators, yet out of all the building shapes they could have chosen, they depicted a building that looked eerily similar to the Shard. And more followed. In the same episode, all librarians have been replaced by robots. This too was realized in 2016 when Aberystwyth University students created a prototype library robot. Strangely, the robot was called Hugh, and in the episode, Lisa's upper crust English boyfriend's name is Hugh Parkfield. The episode also carried another prediction, FaceTime. Some argue that FaceTime was predicted many years before in Star Trek. However, The Simpsons added their prediction to the mix as well. Using her phone, Lisa calls her mother Marge, but instead of a phone call, Marge's face pops up onto a screen attached to a rotary dial. The episode aired in 1995, and the first widely available video call came from Skype in 2003. People consider this to be another Simpsons prediction, but many do not realize that a video phone was previously created in 1992, called the video phone. But this phone wasn't widely marketed or publicly available. While the video phone of 1992 was only for those with money, the phone that Lisa used was made for everyday people. So even if it had already existed, this could be added to the list of predictions as it was an everyday item, like the smartphones of today. And similar to video phones, the show also predicted smartwatches. In one scene, Lisa's boyfriend Hugh talks to his watch, where a miniature phone is attached to his wrist. The Microsoft Spot, arguably the first version of the technology, wasn't created until 2004. And because of this brief moment, The Simpsons have been said to have predicted the smartwatch. In one single episode, 4 predictions were made that successfully came true. And it continued only a few episodes later in episode 25. Mr. Burns, Homer's greedy billionaire boss, blocks out the sun with a giant disc to force the people of Springfield to use the energy supplied by his power plant. And though he didn't have the same reasoning, in 2023, billionaire George Soros had a similar idea. Soros suggested to the Munich Security Conference that they should make use of cloud cover to shield the Arctic ice from the sun's rays. It was an effort to deter global warming, but still, a billionaire trying to block out the sun, it too became a Simpsons prediction realized. In season 7, one episode shows Homer taking 2 of his children to a music festival. One of these events was a concert by Cypress Hill, a well-known hip-hop group who had accidentally booked an event to perform with the London Symphony Orchestra while under the influence. Almost 30 years later, the 2 entities actually chose to collaborate in real life. Fans had requested this collaboration for years because of the episode, and because of this, they made it a reality. Perhaps this is a case of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yet, many add it to the list of Simpsons predictions. Season 9 saw a prediction altogether more eerie, with the Ebola virus being the main subject. In the episode, Marge reads her son a book titled Curious George and the Ebola Virus. Ebola is a serious, life-threatening disease that causes severe inflammation and tissue damage. This is a strange episode for a 1997 animated show episode, as 3 years later, a massive Ebola outbreak would claim hundreds of lives in Uganda and the Republic of Congo. It was still a relatively unknown disease at that point, and still didn't gain widespread knowledge until around 2014 when another outbreak occurred. With such a strange prediction, namely a kid's book about the Ebola virus, The Simpsons' predictions began to look more sinister. It fell along the lines of the prediction, but that one wouldn't come true until many years later. Many of the aforementioned predictions appeared to be nothing more than a coincidence, pardoning those that were a bit too real for comfort. But from here forward, the predictions go from being coincidental or comical to frighteningly accurate. Many make viewers of the show wonder just how the writers made these predictions that would become absolute reality, too accurate for coincidence. Season 10 begins this slide downward into complete eeriness. In the second episode, Homer tries to become an inventor. He begins to write nonsense on a chalkboard, but it becomes a math equation. This supposedly nonsense math equation actually became something much more important. Homer's final figure almost completely accurately matches the description of the Higgs boson, also known as the God particle, which would not be confirmed to exist until 14 years later. As to what the Higgs boson is or does, here's an excerpt from the CERN Research Institute website. The Higgs field was proposed in 1964 as a new kind of field that fills the entire universe and gives mass to all elementary particles. The Higgs boson is a wave in that field. Its discovery confirms the existence of the Higgs field. This is a massive shift in science, with the Higgs boson being discovered in 2012. The boson, I hope I'm saying this right, I apologize to any scientists who are watching and I'm slaughtering the name. The boson was predicted to exist in 1964, but of all places, The Simpsons came the closest to finding it first. Here's what Singh told The Independent. That equation predicts the mass of the Higgs boson. If you work it out, you get the mass of a Higgs boson that's only a bit larger than the nanomass of what a Higgs boson actually is. It's kind of amazing as Homer makes this prediction 14 years before it was discovered. And while this is strange enough, Season 10 also predicted the Fox-Disney merger. The 1998 episode saw Homer suggesting an idea for a movie to 20th Century Fox executives. In the next scene, a billboard shows 20th Century Fox above the sentence, a division of Walt Disney Corporation. This became a reality when, in 2019, a real merger was announced, and the merger went down as one of the most famous Simpsons predictions, with hundreds of memes and commentaries about the Simpsons' ability to see what's to come popping up across the internet. In the age of streaming services, mergers occur often, so if that prediction wasn't exactly difficult to predict, the next one is. In a 2000 premiere that was simply thought to be a complete joke, the episode Bart to the Future of Season 11 sees Lisa becoming president and fixing up the economy after her predecessor ruined it. And her predecessor in this episode, who actually became president in 2016 and again in 2024, was none other than businessman Donald Trump. This was one of the most telling and concerning predictions to people online made by the show. People began to ask questions, many of which were about the source of knowledge that the Simpsons writers must have tapped into. In the very same episode where Trump is predicted to become president, President Lisa is wearing a purple ensemble fitted with a pearl necklace and earrings. This too later became a reality, with Kamala Harris wearing an almost identical outfit the day she was sworn in as vice president. Apparently, Harris's suit was a nod to the suffragette movement, and the purple color was meant as a sign to unify both Republican red and Democrat blue. But many people believe that long before Harris became vice president, The Simpsons somehow saw it coming. The predictions then slowed down for a time, but in season 15, a poster in the background of one frame saw the Matrix character Neo wearing a Christmas hat and striking an action pose with the advertisement, "A Matrix Christmas, coming soon." This would also be realized in the year 2021 when The Matrix Resurrections was released on December 22nd in the United States. While Neo wasn't wearing a Christmas hat in the real poster, it was a Christmas release date for the Matrix franchise. After the Matrix prediction, The Simpsons also predicted legal marijuana in Canada in season 16. 13 years before it became a reality. The episode featured some of the characters traveling to Canada, where one Canadian offers a reefer cigarette as it's legal in the country. Legalized weed was still considered pretty unlikely in America at the time, and it was strange that The Simpsons saw it before anyone else. Yet that prediction may be considered a bit underwhelming next to what The Simpsons predicted in season 17. In the episode Homer's Paternity Coot, Homer finds a man who he believes is his long-lost father. He agrees to venture into the deep ocean with him to try and find an old ship. The two are in personal submersible machines, which look exactly like another submersible machine, the Titan, of the Titan disaster that was destroyed when it went down to the Titanic. In the show, Homer becomes stuck but manages to escape the water. As most people know, the real Titan submersible was not so lucky. A father and son were also aboard the ill-fated submersible when it imploded, ending the lives of all who were on board. These adventurers were also journeying to see an old ship, the Titanic, when the ship met its end on June 18, 2023. It's hard to believe that a cartoon meant for humor could predict such a tragedy, but this too is added to the list of The Simpsons predictions, as well as one of the most harrowing The next prediction was considered altogether more suspicious and concerning, with The Simpsons proving foresight of something that many believed would never happen. The Simpsons movie came out around the time of season 18 in 2007 and made several of its own predictions, one of which was the NSA spying on US citizens. The movie saw the Simpson family on the run from the Environmental Protection Agency, and Lisa was frightened that they were being watched. Marge replies to her daughter that it isn't like the government is listening to everyone's conversation just before the scene cuts to the NSA doing exactly that in a massive room filled with screens. In 2013, a few years after the movie was released, Edward Snowden leaked information that proved that the NSA was in fact watching Americans as part of an anti-terrorist initiative. America was outraged, with many believing that this was an insane breach of privacy and that it was nearly criminal for the government to have done it. This prediction, completely exact, is stated as the most uncanny prediction the show had ever made, next to Donald Trump's presidency and the Titan submersible. Also in the movie was a commercial where Tom Hanks endorses the US after it had lost credibility. This too became real in 2022 when 1 year after President Biden took office, Tom Hanks made a commercial appearance proclaiming America's determination after it had caused economic hardship. Then, another theory recently came out about The Simpsons predicting the Willow Project. In 2023, President Biden signed off on the controversial oil and gas drilling project set to take place in Alaska. The idea was to drill for oil in the state, but it received a lot of backlash as people were concerned that it would destroy the environment of the area. In The Simpsons movie, when the family arrives in Alaska, they're given $1,000 by the border guards simply for moving there. When asked why, the reply is this: "We pay every resident $1,000 to allow the oil companies to ravage our state's natural beauty." When this was noticed, many people stated that The Simpsons had already known about it, and that they had given all their viewers a warning of what was to come. Millions of letters of protest were sent to the White House, yet the project has been approved. After The Simpsons movie, other major predictions followed, leading to a more solidifying belief that The Simpsons somehow can tell our future as a country. In 2008, season 20 of The Simpsons predicted the 2012 voter fraud scare. The episode showed Homer attempting to vote for Barack Obama in his run against John McCain, but the machine incorrectly tallied his vote for McCain, not Obama. A video in 2012 during the Obama-Romney election shows a machine doing almost exactly that, counting a vote incorrectly for Mitt Romney instead of Obama. The show goes on to predict more events, with the season 21 episode accurately predicting the US beating Sweden in the Olympics for their first gold medal in 2018. One season later, the show even predicted a Nobel Prize winner when a betting pool slip for the award featured the name Bengt R. Holmström. The real Bengt, a Finnish economist, would go on to win the Nobel Prize 6 years later. This realization prompted more questions about how the writers knew all of these events and knew that they would happen. Then in season 23, another famous prediction is made, with Lady Gaga playing at the Super Bowl, performing her songs while she flies over the audience. This episode came in 2012, and Lady Gaga went on to perform her greatest hits at the 2017 Super Bowl. And just like in The Simpsons, she's lifted above the audience and flies through the air. The predictions slowed down once more until season 28, where in 2016, The Simpsons predicted the Apple Vision Pro, in an episode where the entire town of Springfield is seen wearing VR headsets. In the episode, the citizens of Springfield walk into poles, fall into manholes, and swipe through the air, similar to the real videos that have emerged of people wearing Apple Vision Pros in public. The Apple Vision Pro was released earlier last year in February of 24, and many videos have been posted on TikTok and YouTube of people getting into trouble because they attempted to use the headset while going about their daily lives. Perhaps it was a joke about the Oculus Rift, which was released in 2016, but the eerie similarity of the functional mishaps occurring as people wear their Apple Vision Pros out in the world mirrored the episode almost exactly. And while not necessarily as eerie or frightening, another episode predicted the ending to Game of Thrones. The 2017 episode, The Simpsons, was made as a parody of the popular fantasy drama series. At the end of the episode, a dragon is seen burning down a village that Homer had just revived. It mirrors the ending of the real show, with Daenerys destroying King's Landing in a fit of rage after the city had already surrendered, but additional frightening predictions came afterward. In the annual Halloween episode, Homer Simpson sleeps through the 2020 election day. When Inauguration Day 2021 comes, the show depicts a post-apocalyptic wasteland. The event that's said to mirror is the January 6th riot, where riots erupted in DC and the Capitol building was attacked. While the Earth was not turned into a wasteland, the Capitol building itself surely felt like it was in danger. Perhaps this prediction was simply less precise than the others, but it still is pretty strange. One that was more precise, however, was the beheading of the Christopher Columbus statue. After the death of George Floyd in 2020, statues linked to racism were taken down or defaced. One of those statues was that of Christopher Columbus in Boston. One episode of The Simpsons, The Telltale Head, centers around Bart Simpson stealing the head of the town's father, Jebediah Springfield, after he's dared to. This episode was aired all the way back in 1990, and the link is fairly significant. Christopher Columbus is known for being one of the men who paved the way for the colonization of America, and Jebediah Springfield founded the city where The Simpsons takes place. Both heads were removed from the statues, though the events of Christopher Columbus's head being removed were far from a prank. When the statue was beheaded, many people began tweeting about the fact that The Simpsons had done it again. More predictions are rumored as people searched for links, such as the coinciding events of the Barbie movie and Donald Trump's arrest. During one 1994 episode, the town newscaster goes on a rant about a new Malibu Stacy doll, meant to be a counterpart to the real-life Barbie. Then after 28 minutes of the rant, he casually states, "Oh, and the president was arrested." This may be a bit disconnected, but many believe that this is also a pair of events that The Simpsons predicted. One of the more frightening predictions that The Simpsons has made, however, was back in 1998, when during a UN meeting, the US ambassador asked the Russian ambassador if the Soviet Union had broken up. As he laughs, he reveals that the Soviet Union is alive and well. Many think that this predicted the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, as Russia fights to take control of Ukraine once again. They further believe that this little joke is proof that Russia will eventually win the war. More predictions are also rumored to exist, such as Toys R Us going out of business, Disney stores closing, CGI actors, Twitter's rebranding, a gas shortage, and even a Russian economic downturn. But perhaps the most shocking and terrifying prediction in the history of the show is that of September 11th. Almost all Americans know what happened in New York City on the 11th of September in 2001. It's a national day of remembrance for the thousands of lives lost. And for the generations who were alive for the event, it's a day that they will never forget as long as they live. And apparently, The Simpsons knew it was going to happen long before it occurred. In an episode about the World Trade Center titled New York vs. Homer Simpson, a brochure is held up reading $9 a day next to the World Trade Center, styled as the number 11. The background of the brochure is a deep orange, as if the skyline is on fire. Then 10 years later, the World Trade Center crashed in flames on the very date 9/11. This was the event that led many to believe that the predictions made by The Simpsons weren't just uncanny, but were suspicious, perhaps even dangerous. With these and many other events being predicted by the show, it's clear that something more is happening behind the set of the animated series. But what is it? Is it just talented writers? Are these people really good at guessing? Are they just writing very creative storylines? Or are there things that people know that they're being told to write into the show? You know, people always say they put it right in front of your face. It's right there, just look at it. One of the things people have pointed out is the connection between The Simpsons and Freemasonry. Over the years, many people have asked how The Simpsons is telling fortunes. There have even been entire books published on this subject, with some making dangerous claims. The writers themselves say that the clever pop culture references are similar to events that have already taken place, and that history merely repeats itself. Others think that the writing team is pretty good at making educated guesses based on the social climate of America. Others say that with over 700 episodes, the writers were bound to get a few things right. But this list contains over 30 accurate predictions, one being a massive tragedy on American soil. It almost seems as though something else, something bigger, is at play. Many have taken to the internet to post their theories and their evidence. One TikTok video shows a Simpsons writer becoming incredibly nervous when a fan asks him how they managed to get so many things right, especially Donald Trump's presidency. The writer, meeting fans at a convention, quickly interjects, "Oh, don't believe everything you hear." But then, the show writer becomes even more anxious and suddenly loses his train of thought when asked, "What about the 9/11 prediction?" After a long pause where the writer says, "Hold on," and looks around as if for someone to come end the discussion, he shakes his head and states, "It's just a coincidence." Then, after the amateur journalist presses him further, the writer motions to the convention manager to his right and vaguely threatens the man by saying he's in charge of the whole convention. It was as if he was telling the journalist that he either stopped or he would be forced to leave. Was it just a writer who didn't like this implication, bothered by the question, or was he really worried that the fan was getting close to the truth? And what could that truth be? One of the theories is that The Simpsons' precognition is that the show writers and producers are part of some sort of secret cult, perhaps even the Freemasons or the Illuminati. Many say that the evidence is in the show itself. One episode showcasing April Fool's Day shows Lisa talking about the fact that April Fool's Day used to be the pagan New Year. The next scene shows the Simpsons family dressed in furs dancing around a campfire and sacrificing a family of Christians to their god Baal. And this isn't the only reference to cults or rituals in the show. In fact, there are episodes of The Simpsons where the town succumbs to a cult. The Joy of Sect was a 1998 episode meant to be a spoof of Scientology. There have been obviously many theories that Scientologists play a part in controlling the world, particularly because many of the church's members are wealthy and influential. But another theory links the creator, Matt Groening, to a familiar culprit in Conspiracies, the Freemasons. One episode spoofs the Freemasons, exchanging the group's name with the Stonecutters. In the episode, the parodied Freemasons are seen carrying signet rings that unlock vending machines, have special bumper stickers that let them bypass traffic, and get to call a real emergency hotline rather than the apparently fake 911. But the most obvious nod to this preternatural knowledge could be the smoking gun. An apparent statement of comedy occurs during the episode where, as Mr. Burns believes everyone is covered with germs, the same germs are covering the face of his sidekick Smithers. As Smithers stands next to his boss, the camera pans in to show his face covered in a massive colony of germs as they state in unison, "The Freemasons run the country!" It seems almost a warning, or a mocking fact that no one can do anything about. The scene breaks the fourth wall of the animated universe and makes a statement about our real world's true order. At least that's what some think. Was this only a joke? Or was this a cry for help, something darker? The entire episode itself is a reference to the storied powers of authority given to the Freemasons, and perhaps a nod to Matt Groening's rumored affiliation. Many theories link Matt Groening to the Masons, stating that he uses his role as a writer of the show to insert subtle nods to the future that his organization has planned. Is there any evidence of this? Well, there are frames of the show that depict what look like cult rituals, something else that the Freemasons are accused of performing in private. While one of the biggest conspiracies in the world points to the Masons running all media and government, there are only small bits of information, mostly what Matt Groening has written in his episodes, which points to his link to the Masons. One small piece of evidence draws from a theory that claims that every Freemason member strikes a certain pose for some of their photos, the so-called Eye of Illumination, where they place their fingers and thumbs over their left eyes as if to open it wider. Matt Groening can be seen performing this famous gesture in photos. Though this is normally associated with the Illuminati, the theory links that the two could actually be the same, with the Freemasons simply being a cover name for the massive order that controls our world from the shadows. One of the biggest predictions, the most frightening, and the most damning piece of evidence is that 9/11 prediction made in 1997 in the episode. Unless it was absolute chance and all of the right elements seemed to fall in place, the number 9, the towers made to look like an 11, and the backlighting of a fiery skyline, someone on the writing team seemingly knew something that they weren't telling anyone else about. I mean, that is the most bizarre thing. I know it could just be completely total coincidence. I'm not saying that by the way, I'm not endorsing any theory here. I'm just spelling out to you what people believe. Like, personally, I don't think that there's a Freemason involvement in The Simpsons. I don't think so. But I know a lot of people are going to comment after this and say, like, you don't believe that? Like, what the hell, man? And I'm like, my mind's always open. I can be swayed. So if you guys have any additional evidence or anything you've found, feel free to comment it. But that's just my opinion. Interestingly though, with the Freemason angle, another scene from the show shows the Simpson family as they're parked in front of a 33-cent store. This may seem harmless. I mean, it's a really specific number, isn't it? 33 cents. Until you realize that 33 is a degree of Freemason, one of the highest, considered a master Mason. So the number 33 is very relevant to the Freemasons. Why choose a 33-cent store? The Supreme Council is the only part of the order that can award this, and it's meant to honor outstanding work and sacrifice to the Mason's craft. Numerology further connects the two. Numerology can be seen as a stretch, but in some cases it can show its merit. Numerology is a belief in the occult, divine, or mystical relationship between a number and an event. Numerology calculators exist on the internet, where people can get the value of their name translated into numbers for values including Pythagoras or Chaldean. Many believe that numerology is a chosen method of secret communication for the Masons, and in the case of the Simpsons, it certainly seems to point to something more than numbers. When the name Simpson is entered into a numerology calculator, the number 33 is the total for the value Pythagoras. So, was the name Simpson actually chosen because it sounded like simpleton, or was it chosen as a nod to Matt Groening's rank in the Order of the Freemasons? Possibly a cover for the Illuminati. While there is no solid proof that Matt Groening is a 33rd degree Mason, many believe that this subtle nod holds an answer. After many years of predictions, cult references, the Freemason episode, the foreknowledge of the Twin Towers, knowing who would become president, and predicting a pandemic, there's more than enough evidence to say that there's much more than just luck on the show writer's side. It's been said for years that the Freemasons have intimate knowledge of the future because they plan it all themselves, according to theorists. The facts are all there. The Simpsons, a cartoon series, has successfully predicted the future over 30 times, sometimes with terrifying accuracy. So, could Matt Groening really be a 33rd degree Mason, giving us hints to look for in our future? Another theory states that Groening isn't a Mason at all. He's a time traveler. Matt Groening is well known for another television show as well, Futurama. In it, a slacker named Philip J. Fry is sent to the year 3000 after falling into a cryogenics machine. It's uncanny that a man who predicted so much about the future made a show dedicated to it. Perhaps Futurama is a nod to Matt Groening being from the year 3000 himself, where time travel has successfully been created. It would make sense with his jokes and subtle hints foreshadowing events that sometimes would take over 10 years to come true. So obviously, even though I don't feel like I need to stress this, I don't believe Matt Groening is a time traveler. I think it's just funny to kind of take a look at all the different things people believe in all these different cases. And there are people who legitimately believe that Matt Groening is a time traveler. If you're one of them, I didn't mean to offend you. Many believe, though, that there are still hidden references to events in the episodes that may still take place. With all the events that the show has already predicted, it's almost common knowledge that The Simpsons has some form of fortune-telling ability. Whatever the case, people have been watching episodes of The Simpsons looking for more predictions to come true, but unfortunately, we won't know which are real until they happen. There could be no rhyme or reason for the next prediction to occur. It could happen at any time in any part of America or even anywhere in the world. So, what events may still come true? As time goes on, we can't be sure how many more accurate predictions will come to pass. The Simpsons began as a comedic cartoon aimed at families all over the country. It was supposed to be a satirical mirror of everyday life for Americans. Over the years, though, it's evolved from a funny show into a somewhat frightening phenomenon that begets some serious questions. Is our media run by Freemasons? Is somebody out there showing us their plans through a fictional cartoon family? Or are time travelers in our midst passing through the veil of physics to reveal our fates? In the case of The Simpsons, maybe it's true that art can predict reality. The frightening thought, however, is that this art isn't predicting reality. It might be warning us about it. It shows us a carefully organized plan made by the shadowy hands of the hidden elites, while the strings are pulled around us. As human beings, we like to know our future. We visit fortune tellers to peel back the clouds of mystery. We fantasize about time machines that can take us beyond our age and see what awaits us. We like to feel safe, believing that we can plan for what we know is going to come next. But no one foresaw that in 1989, when The Simpsons first aired, it would become a fortune teller that could show us what's to come. And perhaps we would have rather not known. One image from the show stands clear, however, after Inauguration Day, when the lands were turned into a war zone and the skies became flame. Perhaps this wasn't a warning about January 6th of 2021. Perhaps it was a warning of something much darker and much more sinister. Could this be a prediction of an apocalypse yet to come? And what about all the other predictions that they've yet to make that could equally be as terrible? Whatever happens, it's clear that if we want to know what comes next, all we need to do is turn on the TV. So, The Simpsons phenomenon. Wow, that's a lot of examples. That was a very thorough walkthrough. That episode, I forgot how long that episode was. I'm dying here because I'm sick. You can hear it in my voice, but it is crazy. I feel like, especially if you're listening to this episode just as the podcast, I feel like you need to go on YouTube and watch the episode so you can see the visuals of what we're talking about here, because there are some of these that are just so unbelievably weird when you see them that it gives you a weird feeling where you're like, ugh. Like something's really off here. You know what I mean? What do I think? I don't know what I think. I mean, I'm, somewhat skeptical when it comes to a lot of things, so I tend to view this as a lot of eerie coincidences, but I don't know. I can always be wrong. And I do want to point out that the word eerie, I'm putting that in there specifically because I don't think it's just some little coincidence. I think it's like straight up spooky how accurate some of these are, and to think that there could be some sort of an implication beyond that. That's where it gets a little spooky for me. Anyways, y'all, thank you so much for listening today. Let me know what you think about this episode and the new background. Let me know what you think I could change, improve on. I want to make your guys' experience so much better. If you want to listen to the show uncensored, it's available on all podcasting platforms, so just listen to the show if you don't like the censorship. I'm also going to be launching a Patreon soon where we're going to have the uncensored versions of the videos. So I'm going to be getting that to you guys. I could rant all day about my thoughts on that, but yeah, I'll save it for another day. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Keep your tinfoil hat on, stay suspicious, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.